So, how many of us are doing our practices, whether it's meditation or some sort of grounding, centering practices, and finding that we still, nevertheless, feel anxious, stressed, overwhelmed, maybe a little depressed? Because those practices that we do, if we are doing them at all, just don't seem to have this lasting effect throughout the day. The message that's coming through me to really share today is a very advanced spiritual message, and it's applicable to everyone, whether or not you have a spiritual practice in place already. But for those who are already doing a spiritual practice, it can feel very frustrating that you can achieve this sort of high state of bliss and centeredness a lot of the time, but not be able to sustain it through certain life challenges. So what I'm hearing from tons of women lately in my personal life and also online is that they are feeling really anxious, in some cases not really even knowing why. They're feeling a lot of overwhelm. There is just an extraordinary tsunami of things on us as women, as mothers, things to do, pressures, things that we're supposed to do, a long list of like our things we do for the kids, things we do for ourselves, things we do for our jobs, things we do for the house, things we do for our husbands, and then of course the things that we want to do. And women are just walking around feeling like this can't be the way life is meant to be. And it's not the way life is meant to be. But the feeling of anxiety that's become so commonplace among all different types of people, not just women, not just mothers. It's common among teens, common among men, and especially parent fathers. This feeling of unease almost is not coming from the things that we think it is. It's not even the long to-do list. It's not that thing that really upset you that you're now very focused on, whether it was an interaction with your child or your husband or a friend or family member. It's not just the feeling of being alone, which many women tell me they don't have close girlfriends. So that in of itself is leaving people feeling like they don't have a place to really share these feelings that are overtaking them. But the thing that is really coming through me to share is that all of those things we're focused on are really just excuses. It's like we start to feel bad and then we look for, well, what is the reason that I feel bad? Something must have happened, and it usually is easy to find like some little trigger that happened that got you feeling off. And then it doesn't matter what kind of spiritual practices you do, you just might not be able to get back into that feeling of centeredness for sometimes hours, days, weeks. And the true thing that's causing that, the thing that I really am being told to share today, is that this feeling of unease comes from a fundamental disconnection from your soul. So when we feel negative emotions, and especially anxiety, stress, and unease, and depression, it's because we have disconnected ourselves from a higher power. I'm calling that soul. So you can call it whatever you want. You could call it God, quantum field if you're more scientific. But we're in an era now where we can no longer pretend that we're just human beings walking around totally cut off from anything other than the surface of life. That's not true. It never was true. And those of us who tried, including myself, who tried to live that way, found themselves going down a dark hole of disconnection, because that's not the reality. The reality is that we are living our lives on at least two levels at all times. And we have, this is how I like to look at it to make things very simple. Of course, we're probably living on multiple levels beyond our even comprehension. But two levels is what I like to work with. We're living on a human level, and that's the level where all the events of our lives are playing out. That's the level of our neurology, our psychology, our physical bodies. Let me think what other pieces. Our psychology, I don't know if I said that. It's the level at which you have your masculine and feminine energy playing out. And then we are also living at the level of our spirit. So everywhere we go, our soul is going with us. And pretending that that's not there gives us this very uneasy feeling that we are sort of alone here, and we don't know where we're going, and we don't know how to make things right. And it's because there is this life force energy, which is which I call soul. And again, you can call it by whatever name. There is this life force energy that's meant to be streaming through us in a completely unfettered way, a completely free flow of life force energy. And when you have that, you feel amazing. That is the true cause of feeling incredible. And when you don't have it, is the true cause of feeling uneasy, disconnected, anxious, and depressed. So it's not just brain chemistry. Yes, I do think that plays a role for sure, but it's not just the physical body. It's not just the brain. It's the spirituality. It's the spiritual aspect of life that's missing. And those of us who are already doing a spiritual practice, but yet we can't sustain it, which is where I was actually up until a few months ago. It does come from, even though you've connected into your soul at some point when you did your spiritual practice, if it was successful, if it wasn't, whatever, then you have disconnected. And so you go through your day and you find something that's really bothering you and you focus on it, and it could even be a tiny little thing, and it just sets you off. And in that moment, you've disconnected yourself from your soul, not literally, but you've disconnected your emotions, your flow of energy from soul, because soul is going around, following you around, literally with you, inseparable from you, and focusing on everything that you're focused on. And yet when you start to have these made up human stories around how things are going wrong, soul doesn't agree. And soul is never casting you out and saying okay, you're wrong, so therefore I separate myself from you. But our souls are way, way, way too holistic and connected and part of us for that. But yet we pinch ourselves off from that feeling of free-flowing life force energy. And then we feel bad. And then we really start to look for a reason. Well, that person's such a jerk, or the situation is so overwhelming. And it becomes a snowball effect to where we can't even get back to that high vibrational state, which is our natural state. Now, on the other hand, if you look at very young children, they will, go along and being so happy no matter what, and then something upsets them, they melt down, they throw a tantrum, and then after it's over, it's they easily and quickly recover, right? It's just like an animal who goes through some experience that's a negative experience, but then afterward immediately recovers. It's only the teens and adult humans who are hanging on to things for so long that we're carrying this feeling of disconnection with us throughout our days, sometimes for weeks, months, years. Some people are feeling that disconnection their entire lives. And, I was never somebody that felt called to share spiritual ideas. I've just been doing my own spiritual practice quietly for the last 6 years, or since 2017. And I just feel like I hear people knowing that there is something more available to them in life, on the physical plane of life, but also in the way that they know they should be feeling. We did not sign up for this kind of version of adulthood where we are just overwhelmed all the time and not having fun, and getting divorces and having estranged, dysfunctional relationships with our children. Whoever thought that was going to be our lives, right? Did you think that when you had children, you would be triggered by them all the time, or that you and your husband on your wedding day wouldn't be able to make it through? No, we thought that we were going to have amazing, blessed lives. And we were right to think that. It wasn't false. But unfortunately, we've kind of bought into this paradigm of being disconnected all the time, and that's okay. It's not okay. It's not okay to go around living that way anymore. You have to take the time right in the moment that you start to feel that disconnection to reconnect. It's the only answer. It's the only way to start to lift yourself out of feelings of anxiety and depression. And it's the only way to start to rearrange the physical plane of your life to have more ease and more abundance and more of everything you desire flowing to you. Because that's what soul is here for. It may not literally be its purpose, but that's one thing it's very good at, is leading you toward everything you desire. But what happens when we receive some sort of message from soul? I can tell you for sure, I've been living at a fully new level of connection to my soul. So I up until like seriously a few weeks ago would have said I'm very soul connected. I check in with my soul for all big and small decisions, several times a day. But I was completely missing the fully flowing relationship with soul that was available to me, which I've now tapped into, a feeling of never separating, of always being guided. And it is this completely different experience of life. It's like I don't have to do things that I don't want to do because they just magically get done for me, or somehow I don't do them and then they just mystically work out. It's crazy to realize that we're all, and most of us still are, scurrying around feeling like we have to do all these things we don't want to do, and then feeling really bad as a result and very disconnected from soul. And it's just a negative spiral that continues and continues. And I feel the time has come for us to break free. Most of the women that are in my community are mothers. So I also want to say it's time for us to break our children free from this old paradigm too. This disconnection, this relying on others for approval, which sadly I think a big part of childhood, especially when you have young children, is raising them to want your approval. And they naturally do want your approval on their human level. But on the soul level, the child is very free, of course, just like we all are. We're all meant to be free beings. We are all meant to come on this earth and do what we are led to do. And no, that doesn't mean causing destruction and mayhem and hurting other people, because your soul will never, ever guide you to the detriment of others. Soul has a way of working things out so that even things that seem like they would be in conflict can work out to the benefit of every single person involved. Doesn't that sound like the world you want to be a part of? Don't you want your children to be part of that world? We have to stop recreating this paradigm of hardship and struggle and suffering and scarcity that our children have been living, that we've been living under, and then perpetuating it to our children. So, I've been having some conversations with friends who have teens lately, and there's a lot of people sending their children off to college, applying now, or they recently sent their children off to college. And so it's been a big topic of conversation among my peer group of, what your children are going to study and how they're going to, whether they're going to go to college at all. There's a super strong push to get your children, obviously, to go to college, whether or not they want to. And then a friend of mine was sharing that she and her husband had shepherded their daughter into a specific major, which was finance, because they felt that that would be something lucrative and also versatile and, of course, marketable for her. And I really wanted to say to this friend, you don't have a finance degree and you've been extraordinarily successful. And where do we get off choosing, what is the direction of our children's lives? Because this is causing them to disconnect from that life force energy that they have, from their inner guidance, telling them where is the bliss for them. And it's not just about feeling good, it's about having actual real world success. Because soul has the ability to tell you how to get to that success. And soul has the ability to tell your children how to get to their success. But you and your human self, I and my human self, we really don't have that crystal ball. All we can go by is the old of what we've learned in the past. So in the past, we may have been one of the people that followed our bliss and didn't get the finance degree or equivalent, and maybe that didn't work out so well for us, and we want to make sure our children take a more lucrative, prosperous path. Or, you know, we were the ones, I know so many women who are doctors and lawyers because their parents pushed them into it, and they are financially successful. The majority of them are absolutely miserable because that isn't truly what they wanted, but they may just be recreating that same paradigm with their children. So what I want to say about this is that we don't have to assume that what happened in the past with us is how things are going to be going forward, because we are in a new era. We are in a new paradigm. And the way things worked before is not how it's going to work going forward. Going forward, those who are able to connect to soul and be guided through their inner guidance, and again, calling soul whatever name you want, whether it's God or quantum field or just inner guidance, because you know that that's available to you. Those of us and our children who are able to live that way, to be guided through our inner voice, we're the ones that are going to succeed and thrive and have all of the things that we desire in this new world, in this new era. And there's no reason to be teaching our children the old paradigm, and there's no reason for us to be in that old paradigm. We have to break free. We have to trust. It really comes down to trust and saying, okay, what happened before, what came before this is not the way it has to continue. It takes just each one of us making those throughout the day connections into an inner voice, and being led by that, and having the courage to make decisions that maybe your peers aren't making, or your family isn't supporting, that maybe your spouse isn't even supporting, and allow your children and allow yourself to take the path that actually is what's being shown to you, what you're being guided for. That's the message that I have to share. It was really coming through that it's so important for us to basically not think that the old way is the way it's going to continue. It's not. And it's so important for those of us who have a spiritual practice already, but then feel like disconnected throughout the day or for days or weeks or months at a time, to realize it is the fundamental relationship with soul that is the piece that we're missing, and that we have to just on a moment-to-moment basis reconnect as needed. And if you are watching on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe, like, and hit the notification for more videos like this. Thanks for watching.